They say knowledge is power, but in the criminal underworld, silence is the deadliest weapon of all. When Victor Kalin, the city's most feared Mafia don, walked into an exclusive high-end restaurant, he thought he was untouchable. He looked at his waitress, a woman he deemed beneath him, and mocked her in German, convinced her cheap uniform meant she was uneducated. He expected her to cower, he expected her to serve him in silence, but he didn't know who she really was. What happens when the prey speaks the predator's language? You are about to find out, and the secret she exposes changes everything. The Obsidian Lounge was the kind of place where the air conditioning smelled like expensive perfume, and the lighting was dim enough to hide sins, but bright enough to catch the sparkle of diamonds. For Issa Corwin, it was just another shift on a Tuesday that felt like a Monday. Her feet throbbed in the mandatory 2-in heels, and her apron, though starched and pristine, felt like a shackle. Issa wasn't supposed to be here. 3 years ago, she had been finishing a degree in international relations at the University of Zurich. Now, she was refilling water glasses for men who tipped in insults rather than cash. She kept her head down, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that accentuated the sharpness of her cheekbones. Cheekbones she had learned to hide behind menus and wine lists. Table 4, the floor manager, a nervous man named Arthur, hissed as he passed her. "The VIPs, don't look them in the eye, and for God's sake, Issa, be faster than last time." Issa nodded, gripping the tray of crystal tumblers. She knew who was at table 4 before she even turned the corner. The energy in the room had shifted, gravitating toward the semi-private alcove by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Victor Kalin sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 men who looked less like dinner guests and more like security disguised in Armani. Victor was undeniably striking sharp jawline, ice-blue eyes that seemed to dissect everything they touched, and a posture that screamed dominance. He didn't just occupy space, he owned it. He was the head of the Kalin Syndicate, a logistics empire that moved everything from luxury cars to things that weren't listed on any manifest. Issa approached the table, her training taking over. She placed the water glasses down with the silence of a ghost. "Sparkling or still?" she asked, her voice a practiced monotone. Victor didn't look up from his phone. He was scrolling through something, his brow furrowed. "Still," he muttered, waving a hand dismissively as if shooing away a fly. One of his associates, a burly man with a scar running through his eyebrow named Stefan, leered at her. "Bring the wine list, the expensive one." "Certainly, sir." Eisler turned to leave, but she lingered just a fraction of a second too long, her eyes catching the screen of Victor's phone. It was a blueprint. She looked away instantly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She recognized that layout. It was the Port of Hamburg's restricted container terminal. As she walked away, the sounds of the restaurant, the clinking of silverware, the low hum of jazz seemed to fade, replaced by the rush of blood in her ears. She had spent 3 years running from the world Victor Kalin ruled, only to end up serving him water. When she returned with the sommelier, Victor was engaged in a heated, hushed conversation with Stefan. They stopped the moment she arrived. Victor finally looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. His gaze wasn't appreciative. It was calculating. He looked at her worn hands, the slight fray on her collar, the tired shadows under her eyes. He turned to Stefan and switched languages effortlessly, sliding into a harsh, guttural German. Victor said, his voice dripping with aristocratic boredom. "Pretty face, but empty. She is probably dumb as bread. Women like that always end up the same way, on their knees or on the street." Stefan chuckled, taking a sip of his water. "Verschwendung," he replied. "Waste." Victor smirked, unaware that the empty waitress pouring his Pinot Noir had grown up speaking German in the boarding schools of Geneva. He continued, still in German, his tone lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Make sure the shipment clears customs tonight. If the Mir family tries to intercept the containers at Dock 4, burn them. I don't care about the collateral, just get it done." Isla's hand didn't tremble. She didn't gasp. She poured the wine with the precision of a surgeon, filling the glass to the perfect level. But inside, a cold fury was spreading through her veins. It wasn't just the insult men like Victor always underestimated women like her. It was the name, the Mir family. They weren't just rivals. The Myers were the reason was an orphan. They were the reason she was Isler Corwin Waitress instead of Isabella von Amsberg Ares to a shipping dynasty that had been systematically dismantled and destroyed. Victor Kalin wasn't just a rude customer. He was a partner to he people who killed her father. Isla placed the bottle on the table. The condensation felt cold against her fingertips. She had two choices: walk away and keep her cover, or light the match that would burn this entire charade to the ground. She looked at Victor. He was ignoring her again, expecting her to vanish. Isla cleared her throat. The sound was soft, but in the sudden lull of conversation at table 4, it sounded like a gunshot. Victor stopped mid-sip, lowering his glass slowly. He looked up annoyed. "Is there a problem?" he asked in English, his tone clipping the vowels. Isler stood straight. For the first time all night, she dropped the slouch. She pulled her shoulders back, her chin lifting. The transformation was subtle but terrifying. The tired waitress vanished, replaced by someone who held herself with the regal bearing of a queen in exile. She looked Victor dead in the eye. The blue of his irises clashed with the burning brown of hers. Minor intelligence. Isla said her German was flawless. Not the German of a tourist, but the crisp, high-dialect German of the elite. Translation: "Your manners are as poor as your estimation of my intelligence." The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Stefan choked on his water. Victor didn't move. He froze his hand, tightening around the stem of his wineglass until his knuckles turned white. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away, leaving only the electric tension between them. Isa wasn't done. She stepped closer, invading his personal space just enough to be threatening. "And übrigens," she continued, her voice dropping to a silken whisper that only the men at the table could hear. "For translation. And, by the way, if you attack the Meer family at Dock 4, you will walk into a trap. The Meers use Dock 4 as bait. The real shipment is going through Rotterdam, but you would know that if you weren't so busy insulting the staff." Victor's face went pale, then flushed with a dangerous shade of crimson. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound drew the attention of nearby tables, but Victor didn't care. He loomed over her, radiating menace. "Who are you?" he demanded, his English returning low and dangerous. "Who sent you?" Isla didn't flinch. "Nobody sends me hair, Kalin. I send myself." She turned on her heel to walk away, but Victor's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron-tight. The warmth of his skin against hers sent a jolt through her that she hadn't expected, fear mixed with adrenaline. "Let go," she said calmly, looking down at his hand and then back at his face. "Unless you want a scene that ends with the police checking your pockets for that unregistered firearm you keep in your left jacket pocket." Victor's eyes widened slightly. He released her as if burned. He stared at her, trying to solve the puzzle she presented. A waitress who spoke High German knew the intricacies of European shipping routes and could spot a concealed weapon from a glance. This was no waitress. "You realize," Victor said, his voice barely a whisper, "that you just signed your own death warrant. You don't walk away from knowing my business." Isla offered him a cold, hollow smile. "I died 3 years ago, Victor. You can't kill a ghost." She walked away. Then her head held high, leaving the most powerful man in the city, staring after her in stunned silence. Back? In the kitchen, Isler's composure shattered. Her hands shook violently as she gripped the stainless steel counter. She had done it. She had just exposed herself to the Kalin syndicate. It was reckless. It was stupid. Isa Arthur, the manager, stormed over. "What did you do? Mr. Kalin looks like he's seen a phantom. He's demanding to speak to the owner." "I quit," Isa said, untying her apron and throwing it onto the counter. "Mail me my check." She grabbed her coat and ran out the back exit into the cool New York night. She needed to move. She needed to disappear. She knew Victor Kalin. He wouldn't let this go. He was a hunter, and she had just smeared blood on the trail. But as she hurried down the alleyway, avoiding the street lights, she didn't notice the black SUV idling at the corner. She didn't see Stefan step out. Phone pressed to his ear. "Boss," Stefan said into the phone, watching Isa's retreating figure. "She's running. Do we take her?" On the other end of the line, Victor watched the empty spot where Isa had stood moments before. He picked up the wine glass she had poured, twisting it in the light. "No," Victor said, a dark obsession taking root in his mind. "Don't take her. Follow her. I don't want her hurt. I want to know who trained her. And Stan." "Yeah, boss. Find out why she knows about Rotterdam. If she's right, she just saved us $50 million. If she's lying, I'll kill her myself. I's apartment in Atoria was a shrine to mediocrity. It was a fourth-floor walk-up with peeling beige wallpaper and a radiator that clanged like a dying engine. But beneath the floorboards of the bedroom closet, hidden under a loose plank she had pried up 3 years ago, lay the remnants of Isabella von Amsberg. She fell to her knees, her breathing ragged, and shoved aside the piles of cheap waitress uniforms. Her fingers found the groove in the wood, and she pried the plank loose. Inside lay a waterproof duffel bag and a small metal box. She opened the box first. Inside was a Swiss passport with a different name, a stack of cash wrapped in rubber bands, and a single photograph. The photo showed a stern-looking man with silver hair standing on the deck of a yacht, his hand resting protectively on the shoulder of a laughing teenage girl. Heinrich von Amsberg, the shipping magnate of Zurich, and his daughter. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered, her thumb tracing his face. "I slipped. I let the anger take the wheel." She shouldn't have spoken to Victor Kalin. She knew the rules of the underground better than anyone. Silence is survival. But seeing him, the man whose syndicate had allegedly orchestrated the hostile takeover that drove her father to suicide, had broken something inside her. Isa shoved the photo into the bag. She had to move. If Victor was as smart as she feared, he wouldn't just be looking for a waitress named Isla. He would be looking for the anomaly. She stripped out of her work clothes, changing into dark jeans, heavy boots, and a nondescript hoodie. She pulled her hair down, letting it fall around her face, and jammed a baseball cap over her eyes. She grabbed the bag and moved to the window, peering through the blinds. The street below looked quiet, too quiet. 3 miles away in the penthouse office of Kalin Tower, the atmosphere was suffocating. Victor stood by the window, staring out at the city grid. The glass was bulletproof, but he felt exposed. Beat. Behind him, Stefan was on the phone, his voice tense. He hung up and looked at Victor's back. "The Rotterdam tip," Stefan said, his voice grave. "It was solid, boss. Our contact at the port confirmed that the Mir family moved their heavy enforcement to Dock 4 an hour ago. They were waiting for us. If we had hit that container, we'd have been slaughtered. The real product, the prototype chips, just cleared customs in Rotterdam under a shell company label." Victor turned slowly. The rage that usually fueled him was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp curiosity. "She saved us," Victor murmured. "A waitress at the Obsidian Lounge saved the organization $50 million and a dozen lives." "Who is she?" Stefan asked. "A plant? A rival spy trying to gain trust?" "No." Victor walked to his desk where a file lay open. It was thin, painfully thin. "I had the cyber team scrub her background. Isla Corwin's social security number issued 3 years ago in Ohio. Before that, nothing. No birth certificate, no school records, no taxes. Isa Corwin didn't exist before 2023. He picked up a grainy photo printed from the restaurant security feed. It was blurry, but her posture was unmistakable. The way she held her head, that wasn't the posture of a servant. That was the posture of someone who expected rooms to go silent when she entered them. She speaks High German," Victor noted, tapping the photo. "She knows the internal logistics of the Mayer shipping routes, and she recognized the layout of the Hamburg terminal on my phone screen from 3 feet away, upside down." "Ex-intelligence," Stefan suggested. "Or ex-royalty," Victor countered. He picked up a second piece of paper. "I had the team run facial recognition against European databases. It took a while because she's thinner now, harder. But look," he slid a glossy magazine clipping across the desk. It was from Forbes Europe, dated 4 years prior. The headline read, "The Tragedy of House von Amsberg Corruption, Suicide, and the Missing Are Heirs." Stefan's eyes widened as he looked at the photo of the young socialite in the article, then back at the security footage. "Isabella von Amsberg, the shipping heiress. Everyone thinks she's dead. Rumor was she drowned herself in Lake Geneva after her father's scandal." "She didn't drown," Victor said, a dark smile playing on his lips. "She came to New York to hide in plain sight." "But why warn us?" Stefan asked. "The Kalin syndicate. We were the ones hired to dismantle her father's assets. On paper, we're her worst enemies," that Victor said, grabbing his coat. "Is exactly what I intend to ask her. Get the car. I don't want the hit squad. I want the extraction team. If the Myers find out she's alive, they will finish what they started 4 years ago. We need to get to her before she disappears again." Isa made it 3 blocks before she realized she was being herded. She had exited her building through the basement laundry room, emerging in the back alley. She walked briskly toward the subway station, keeping to the shadows, but the rhythm of the street was wrong. A black sedan turned the corner too slowly. A man in a gray trench coat stopped to tie his shoe for too long. She was burned. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She pivoted, ducking into a 24-hour bodega. The bell chimed. She moved to the back, pretending to look at canned soup, while watching the reflection in the circular security mirror in the corner. The man in the trench coat lingered outside the glass door. She needed an exit strategy. The bodega had a rear delivery door, but it was likely locked or alarmed. She reached into her pocket and gripped a small canister of pepper spray, a pathetic weapon against professional hitmen. But it was all she had. She moved toward the back room, pushing through the swinging plastic flaps. "Hey, employees only," the clerk behind the counter shouted. "Bathroom," Isa yelled back, not stopping. She hit the metal rear door, locked. She slammed her shoulder against it. Nothing. The front door chimed again. Didn't wait. She grabbed a crate of soda bottles and smashed it against the lock mechanism. It didn't break the door, but it triggered the alarm. A deafening siren began to wail. Chaos. That was her friend. She kicked the door again, adrenaline lending her hysterical strength. The latch gave way with a screech of tearing metal. She tumbled out into the alleyway, scrambling to her feet. She ran. She sprinted down the alley, splashing through puddles, her breath tearing at her throat. She needed to get to the subway. If she could get into the tunnels, she could lose them. She burst out onto the main avenue, weaving through the late-night traffic. Horns blared. A taxi swerved to miss her. Isabella. The name froze her blood. It wasn't Isla. It was her real name. She spun around. A black SUV had pulled up onto the sidewalk, blocking her path. The rear door slid open. Victor Kalin sat inside, calm, composed, looking utterly out of place amidst the grime of Queens. "Get in," he said. It wasn't a shout. It was a simple instruction. "Go to hell," Eisler gasped, backing away. "You can go to hell or you can get in the car," Victor said, his voice raising slightly over the sound of the siren in the distance. "Look to your left," Isla looked. Down the block, a silver sedan was idling. The window was rolled down and the barrel of a suppressed submachine gun was visible, glinting under the street lamp. "That's the mere cleanup crew," Victor said. "They tracked your credit card usage from the bodega. They don't want to talk, Isabella. They want to erase a loose end. I, on the other hand, just want to buy you dinner." Isa looked at the silver car, then at Victor. The silver car's door was opening. 2 men were stepping out. She had 0 options. Isa dove into the back of Victor's SUV. "Go," Victor commanded. The driver fled it. The tires screeched, burning rubber as the heavy vehicle launched forward, merging aggressively into traffic, just as the first bullet sparked off the pavement where Isa had been standing. The drive to Manhattan was silent. The windows of the SUV were tinted so dark that the city outside was nothing but a blur of neon and shadow. Idler sat pressed against the far door, her hand still clutching the pepper spray in her pocket. Victor sat on the other side of the leather bench seat. He didn't look at her. He was typing on a tablet, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. He looked infuriatingly calm for a man who had just been involved in a shootout. "You can stop clutching that spray," Victor said without looking up. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have let the Mir brothers turn you into Swiss cheese back in Queens." "Why did you save me?" Alila asked, her voice steady, despite the trembling in her hands. "You're part of the cart that destroyed my family. You worked with the Myers." Victor finally locked the tablet and placed it on the seat between them. He turned to face her. In the close confines of the car, his presence was overwhelming. He smelled of expensive scotch and gun oil. "Correction," Victor said. "I was hired to facilitate the logistics of your father's asset liquidation. I move things. I don't play politics. But when the Myers decided to frame my organization for the arson that burned down your family's warehouses in Hamburg, well, the partnership dissolved." Ela narrowed her eyes. "You expect me to believe you're a victim?" "I expect you to believe that I am a businessman," Victor replied. "And bad business requires correction. The Myers owe me, and you seem to know more about their operation than my best spies." The car slowed, turning into the underground garage of a massive glass spire. Kalin Tower. "Where are we going?" Isla demanded. "My home," Victor said. because your apartment is currently being tossed by the mere hit squad, and anywhere else you go, you'll be dead by morning. You are in the eye of the storm now, Liebling." The endearment, darling, sounded like a taunt. They took a private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that was larger than the entire building Issa had lived in for the last 3 years. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, cold stone, dark wood, and walls of glass overlooking the empire of New York. Victor walked to a wet bar and poured 2 drinks. He held one out to her. Cognac vintage, better than the swill you served at the Obsidian. Issa ignored the drink. She stood in the center of the room, her arms crossed. "Cut the hose." "Fatality, Victor. What do you want?" Victor took a sip, watching her over the rim of the glass. He admired her fire. Most people in her position would be begging or crying. She was negotiating. "I want the codes," Victor said softly. Issa stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. It insults us both." Victor walked closer, invading her space again, just like in the restaurant. But this time, there was no public to save her. "Your father, Heinrich, was not just shipping consumer goods. He was moving encrypted servers for the Swiss banking sector. When the Mears took over, they found the hardware, but they couldn't access the data. The encryption keys were missing." He stopped inches from her. Heinrich didn't trust digital storage. He was old school. He gave the keys to someone he trusted, someone he knew would never sell him out. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her face impassive. "I'm just a waitress," she whispered. "You are Isabella von Amsber." Victor corrected his voice, dropping to a low rumble. "And you have the location of the master ledger. The Myers killed your father trying to find it. They destroyed your life looking for it, and tonight you proved you still have access to their internal schedules, which means you have access to their network." He reached out his hand, hovering near her face. She flinched, but he didn't strike her. He tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers were warm, rough, and gentle all at once. The touch sent a confused shiver down her spine. "The Myers think you have the ledger," Victor said. "That makes you a target. But if you give it to me, I can use it to crush them. I can bankrupt them by sunrise. I can give you the one thing you've wanted for 4 years." "And what is that?" Issa breathed. "Revenge." Issa looked into his eyes. They were ice blue, cold and hard. But deep within them, she saw a reflection of her own hatred for the people who had taken everything from her. "Why should I trust you?" she asked. "You're a monster, Victor, just a different breed than them." Victor stepped back, setting his glass down. "I am a monster," he agreed readily, "but I am a monster who keeps his word. The Myers want you dead. I want them destroyed. We are natural allies." He walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Here is the deal. You stay here under my protection. You help me decode the Maya logistics using your knowledge of your father's old systems. We dismantle their empire piece by piece. Once they are gone, I give you $5 million and a new identity. You can disappear for real this time." Issa looked at his broad back. It was a deal with the devil. She knew that. Victor Kalin was dangerous. He was a predator. But he was right. She was tired of running. She was tired of serving water to arrogant men while the murderers of her father lived in luxury. She walked over to the bar and picked up the glass of cognac he had poured for her. She took a long swallow, the liquor burning her throat like liquid fire. "10 million, she said. Victor turned around, a slow, genuine smile spreading across his face. It made him look devastatingly handsome, transforming his harsh features into something almost human. "Excuse me, $10 million. Issa repeated, her voice strong. "And I don't just want them bankrupt. I want their reputation destroyed. I want the world to know what they did to my father." Victor laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. "You drive a hard bargain, Princessin. Take it or leave it," she challenged. Victor walked back to her, extending his hand. "Deal, 10 million and the head of Conrad Mir on a platter." Isla hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was firm, engulfing hers. It felt like sealing a pact in blood. "But be warned, Isabella," Victor added, not letting go of her hand, pulling her slightly closer until their bodies almost touched. "This isn't a game anymore. You are in my world now, and in my world, once you're in, you belong to me until the debt is paid." The air between them crackled with sudden, intense heat. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was an undeniable magnetic pull. "I belong to no one," Isla said, pulling her hand away though her breath hitched. "We'll see," Victor murmured. Suddenly, the elevator doors dinged. Stefan rushed in, looking pale. "Boss," Stefan said, breathless. "We have a problem. The police just issued an APB." "For who?" Victor asked, annoyed at the interruption for her. Stefan pointed at Isla. "The Myers didn't just try to kill her. They framed her. They planted the gun that killed the cop in Queens 3 weeks ago in her apartment. They're spinning the narrative. Isla Corwin isn't just a waitress anymore. According to the NYPD, she's a cop killer." Issa gasped, the glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the floor. Victor's face hardened into stone. "They are trying to flush her out. If the police take her, she dies in custody within the hour." He looked at Ila, his eyes blazing. "Welcome to the war, Isabella. There is no going back now. For 3 weeks, the world outside Kalin Tower hunted for Issa Corwin, the cop killer. Her face was plastered on every news station. Her name scrolled across the bottom of every screen in Times Square. But inside the penthouse on the 45th floor, time seemed to warp. The apartment became a war room. The dining table, a slab of rare Italian marble, was buried under schematic server logs and old shipping manifests that had reconstructed from memory. Isler had barely slept. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her skin pale from the lack of sunlight. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers, wearing one of Victor's oversized dress shirts that hung to her knees. Victor stood by the window, watching the rain lash against the glass. The city looked like a watercolor painting dissolving in the storm. He turned to look at her. The sight of her in his clothes did something to his chest, a tightening he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just protecting an asset anymore. He knew it, and it terrified him more than any bullet. "You need to eat," Victor said, his voice rough. He walked over and placed a plate of fruit and cheese on the floor beside her. Asler didn't look up. "I'm close, Victor. The encryption on the mayor's servers isn't just random code. It's a Polybia square, but modified. My father used to teach me codes when I was a child. He treated it like a game." She tapped a pencil against her lip, a nervous habit he had come to memorize. "The key? It has to be something emotional. Henrik didn't trust machines. He trusted memory." Victor sat down on the floor opposite her, the great Mafia Dawn sitting on the carpet like a schoolboy. "What do you remember about the day he gave you the access?" I closed her eyes. "It was my 18th birthday. What?" "We were in the library in Zurich. He played a record, Wagner. He said, 'Isabella, chaos is the music of the world, but logic is the rhythm.'" She snapped her eyes open. "The rhythm? It's the time signature." She grabbed a laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. Victor watched, mesmerized. She wasn't just beautiful. She was lethal. Her mind was a weapon that had been hidden under a waitress's apron for too long. A green progress bar flashed on the screen. "Access granted." Eisler gasped, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I'm in. I have the mayor shadow accounts, the illegal arms deals, the human trafficking routes, the bribes to federal judges. It's all here." She looked up at Victor, her eyes shining with triumph and tears. "We have them." Victor didn't look at the screen. He looked at her. The adrenaline of the moment bridged the gap between them. He reached out, cupping her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed away the dark circles under her eyes. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it." She corrected, her breath hitching as he leaned closer. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with the electricity of a storm about to break. Victor's gaze dropped to her lips. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to consume her. But he stopped inches away. "If I kiss you," Victor murmured, his voice low and dangerous, "I won't be able to stop. And if we do this, there is no going back to just being partners." Eisler didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch, her hand coming up to rest on his chest right over his heart. She could feel it beating strong, steady, a rhythm of its own. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. Victor closed the distance. The kiss was not gentle. It was a collision of two souls who had been starving for something real in a world of lies. It was possessive, desperate, and searingly hot. Issa tangled her fingers in his hair, pulling him closer, anchoring herself to him as the world spun away. For a moment, they weren't a mafia boss and a fugitive. They were just Victor and Isabella. But the moment was shattered by the buzzing of Victor's secure phone on the table. Victor pulled back, resting his forehead against hers for a second, breathing hard. He cursed softly in German and reached for the phone. "Report!" He barked into the receiver. Stefan's voice crackled on the line. "Boss, we have a problem. The data you just accessed, it triggered a silent alarm. The Myers know someone is in the system. They're tracing the IP. Disconnect the proxy," Victor ordered, standing up and pulling Eisler up with him. "How much time do we have?" "None," Stefan said. "But that's not the worst part. Konrad Maurer just initiated Protocol 0. He's scrubbing the servers. He's going to delete everything remotely within 2 hours. If that data vanishes, our evidence is gone. We can't leak it if it doesn't exist." Issa's face went pale. He's wiping the cloud backups. "Can we stop it?" Victor asked her. Issa shook her head frantically. "Not from here. I have read only access to stop a Protocol 0 wipe. I need biometric authorization. I need a retinal scan and a voice print." "Whose?" Victor asked. "My father said, or his bloodline." She looked at Victor, realization dawning on her. "Me? I have to physically authorize the stop command, but the only terminal capable of overriding the wipe is in the Mir private server room." "Where is it?" "The vault," Eisler said, "beneath the maritime exchange building." Victor looked at his watch. "Tonight is the Maritime Charity Ball. The exchange is crawling with security politicians and half the Mir family. Then we have to go to the ball," Eisler said, her voice hardening. "I have to get to that server room within 2 hours." Victor looked at her disheveled, wearing his shirt wanted for murder. Then he looked at the fire in her eyes. "Stefan," Victor said into the phone, "get the car and bring the package I ordered from Milan. We're going out." The Maritime Exchange Building was a fortress disguised as a palace. Gold leaf adorned the columns and crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped from the ceiling. The ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, a swirling mass of New York's elite, all drinking champagne paid for with blood money. At the entrance, security was tight. Metal detectors, ID checks, and a facial recognition system linked to the police database. A black limousine pulled up to the curb. The valet rushed to open the door. Victor Kalin stepped out. He looked every inch the king of the underworld, wearing a bespoke tuxedo that fit his broad shoulders like armor. He buttoned his jacket, his expression bored and arrogant. He turned and offered his hand to the woman inside. Issa stepped out. The silence that rippled through the nearby crowd was audible. She was breathtaking. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk that clung to every curve with a slit that reached her thigh and a back that plunged dangerously low. Diamonds. Victor's mother's diamonds glittered at her throat and ears, but it was her face that changed everything. Her hair was dyed a platinum blonde, styled in old Hollywood waves. Her makeup was sharp, altering the contours of her face just enough to confuse a camera, but not a human eye. She wore a Venetian masquerade mask held in one hand, as per the theme of the night, Masquerade of the Sea. "Ready," Victor murmured, placing a hand on the small of her back. "I was born for this," Ia replied, though her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. They walked up the red carpet. The security guard held up a scanner. "Name?" the guard asked. "Victor Kalin," Victor said smoothly. "And my guest, the Countess von Habsburg." The guard hesitated. Victor slipped a heavy gold-plated coin into the guard's hand, a token of the syndicate. The guard looked at the coin, then at Victor's cold eyes. He lowered the scanner without checking Isla's ID. "Enjoy the evening, sir." They were in. The ballroom was suffocatingly hot. Isla scanned the room, keeping her mask raised. She spotted Konrad Meyer instantly. He was holding court near the orchestra, a glass of scotch in his hand, laughing as if he hadn't ordered a hit on her life 3 weeks ago. "The server room is in the sub," Isla whispered to Victor as they pretended to dance. "Access is through the service elevator in the kitchen." "I'll create a distraction," Victor said, pulling her closer. "You have 10 minutes before the wipe is complete. Stefan has disabled the cameras in the hallway, but the server room is offline. You're on your own in there." "I can do it," Issa said. Victor spun her around, dipping her low. In the middle of the crowded dance floor, he looked down at her. "I know you can, but if you get caught, don't wait for me. Run." He kissed her hand, then released her. Issa slipped into the crowd. "Movie?" NG toward the kitchen doors. Victor adjusted his cufflinks and walked straight toward Konrad Mir. Issa moved through the kitchen like a shadow. The staff was too busy plating lobster thermidor to notice a woman in a ball gown slipping into the freight elevator. She swiped a stolen keycard Victor had procured. The doors slid shut. She pressed the button for the sub. The elevator descended with a groan. Issa checked her watch. 6 minutes remaining. The doors opened onto a sterile white corridor. At the end was a massive steel door. The vault. Isla ran to it. There was a biometric scanner by the handle. She pulled off her glove and pressed her palm against the glass. Scanning. Authorization confirmed. Welcome, Isabella von Amsberg. The heavy bolts retracted with a clank. Isla pushed the door open and ran to the main console. The screen was flashing red. Deletion in progress. 85% complete. She sat in the chair, her fingers flying. Come on, she initiated the override. Voice authorization required. Isabella von Amsberg, she said clearly. Authorization code Alpha Omega Zurich. Voice confirmed. Deletion paused, recovering data. She slumped back in the chair, letting out a breath she felt she'd been holding for 4 years. The screen turned green. The files were restoring. She plugged in the encrypted drive Victor had given her. The download began. Smart girl, a voice said from the doorway. Missler spun around, her blood freezing. Standing there holding a suppressed pistol was Conrad Meyer. He wasn't upstairs. The man in the ballroom had been a decoy, or he had slipped away the moment Victor approached. You really thought you could walk into my house and steal my secrets? Conrad sneered, stepping into the room. You look just like your father, just as arrogant, and just as dead. Isla backed up against the server racks. The download was at 60%. She needed time. You killed him, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You didn't just take his company. You murdered him. He was weak. Conrad shrugged, raising the gun. Business is for the strong, Isabella, and you're just a loose end. He aimed at her chest. Bang! The shot was deafening in the small room. Issa flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, waiting for the pain, but it never came. She opened her eyes. Conrad Meyer was standing there, a look of shock on his face. A small red bloom was spreading on his shoulder. He dropped his gun, stumbling back. Behind him, standing in the doorway with a smoking pistol, was Victor. His tuxedo was torn, his lip bleeding. He had fought his way down. I told you, Victor growled, stepping over Conrad's writhing form. She belongs to me. Victor didn't look at Conrad. He looked at, Is it done? Almost, she said, her hands trembling as she pointed to the screen. 90%. Conrad groaned on the floor, clutching his shoulder. You're fools, he wheezed. You think you can leave? I triggered the silent alarm the moment the vault opened. The police are already sealing the building. You're trapped. Victor walked over to the console and pulled the drive out just as it hit 100%. He slipped it into his pocket. We're not trapped, Victor said, grabbing Isla's hand. We're leaving. How? Isla asked, hearing the distant sound of sirens wailing from the street level above. The elevators are locked down. Victor kicked a grate in the floor open. It revealed a dark, damp tunnel. An old Prohibition-era smuggler's tunnel that connected to the subway system. We go down, Victor said, into the dark. He looked at her, his blue eyes fierce. Do you trust me? I looked at the man who had mocked her, saved her, and now killed for her. She looked at the blood on his knuckles and the devotion in his eyes. With my life, she said. They jumped into the darkness together, leaving the ruined empire of the Myers behind them, just as the police tactical team breached the server room doors. The tunnel smelled of stagnant water and old rust. For what felt like hours, Victor and Isla stumbled through the darkness, the sounds of the chaos at the Maritime Exchange, fading into a dull thrum above them. Victor kept a hand on Isla's arm, guiding her, his other hand gripping his side, where a graze from a ricocheting bullet, one she hadn't noticed in the adrenaline of the server room, was bleeding sluggishly. They emerged into the cool night air under the support pillars of the Brooklyn Bridge. The river lapped against the concrete, black and oily. Stefan is 5 minutes out. Victor rasped, checking his watch. He leaned against a pillar, his face pale in the moonlight. We did it. Esler clutched the drive in her pocket. Not yet. Having the information is one thing. Using it without getting killed is another. A black speedboat cut through the water, its engine purring low. Stefan was at the helm. He pulled up to the service ladder and they scrambled aboard. As the boat tore away toward the open ocean, leaving the sirens of Manhattan behind, Eisler looked back at the skyline. She wasn't running away this time. She was regrouping. 3 days later, the world woke up to a digital apocalypse. At 800 a.m., every major news outlet in New York, London, and Zurich received an anonymous data dump. It wasn't just a leak, it was a flood. The Amsberg files contained terabytes of high-definition video, audio recordings, and banking ledgers. It showed Konrad Mir ordering the arson of the von Amsberg warehouses. It showed the payoff to the corrupt precinct captain who had planted the gun in Eisler's apartment. It showed the dashboard camera footage from the Mir convoy that had actually killed the police officer in Queens, the crime Isa had been framed for. As L.A. sat in the safe house, a modern villa on a private island off the coast of Maine, watching the television. Breaking news, the anchor announced, looking visibly shaken. Federal agents have just raided the Mir estate in the Hamptons. Konrad Meyer, currently hospitalized under police guard, has been charged with racketeering murder and high treason involving the sale of military-grade encryption keys to hostile foreign entities. All charges against Isla Corwin, now identified as Isabella von Amsberg, have been dropped. Isla turned off the TV. The silence in the room was deafening. It was over. The monster under her bed was in chains. She heard footsteps behind her. Victor stood in the doorway. He had cleaned up, though he moved stiffly from his injury. He was dressed in a dark suit, holding a thick envelope. "The helicopter is waiting," Victor said. His voice was devoid of emotion. "It will take you to Boston. From there, a private jet is fueled for Zurich." He walked over and placed the envelope on the coffee table. "Your passport. The deed to your father's old estate. I bought it back from the bank this morning. And a check for $10 million, as agreed." Isa looked at the envelope, then at him. "That's it. Transaction completed." Victor's jaw tightened. "You wanted your life back, Isabella. You have it. The Mirs are gone. Your name is clear. You are a wealthy woman again. You don't belong in my world. You saw what happened at the ball. Blood, bullets, tunnels. That isn't a life. It's a sentence." He turned to leave, unable to look her in the eye. "Go back to the Light Princess and forget you ever met me." Isa stood up. She picked up the envelope. "Victor." He stopped but didn't turn. "You speak excellent German," she said, switching to his native tongue. "But you still understand nothing about women." Victor turned slowly. Isla walked over to the fireplace. She held the envelope over the flames. "What are you doing?" Victor's eyes widened. She dropped the envelope. The fire licked at the paper, consuming the passport, the deed, and the $10 million check. It curled into ash in seconds. "I don't want the money," Eisler said, stepping over the ashes to stand in front of him. "And I don't want to go back to Zurich. There is nothing there for me but ghosts." "Then what do you want?" Victor demanded, his control slipping. "You want to go back to being a waitress? You want to refill water glasses for minimum wage?" "No," said. She reached out and adjusted his tie, her fingers lingering on the silk. "I realized something in that server room. My father was a good man, but he was weak because he fought alone. You are a strong man, Victor, but you are hollow because you fight alone." She looked up into his ice-blue eyes. "I don't want to be a waitress, and I don't want to be a victim. I want to be a partner." Victor stared at her. The silence stretched heavy and electric. "You know what you are asking. There is no retirement in this life. No happy endings." "I don't want a happy ending," Eisler whispered. "I want a real one." She leaned up and kissed him. It wasn't desperate like the first time. It was a promise, a seal on a contract that was worth more than money. Victor broke. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against him as if he wanted to merge their very souls. "Stefan is going to be furious," he murmured against her hair. "He thinks you're bad influence." Isa laughed, the sound bright and free. "Stefan can get his own coffee from now on." 1 month later, the Obsidian Lounge was buzzing. It was Friday night, and the tables were fully booked. The front door opened and a hush fell over the room. Victor Kalin walked in looking as dangerous and regal as ever. But tonight he wasn't alone. On his arm was a woman in a stunning crimson dress, her dark hair sweeping her shoulders, her head held high. The patrons whispered. They recognized her face from the news. The A's who took down the Maya Empire. They were led to table 4, the same table where Victor had mocked a waitress weeks ago. Arthur, the nervous manager, hurried over, sweating profusely. He held the wine list with trembling hands. "Mr. Kalin, Miss von Amsberg, welcome back. We are honored." Looked at Arthur. She looked at the terrified waitress standing behind him, a young girl who looked exhausted. Her apron stained her feet, likely throbbing in cheap heels. Isa took the wine list from Arthur and handed it to the young waitress. "Take the night off. Issa said gently. In fact, take the week off. Paid. Arthur sputtered. But I own the building now, Arthur, Issa said, her voice cool and commanding. And things are going to change around here, starting with how you treat your staff. She turned to Victor, who was watching her with a look of pure, unadulterated pride. Was she asked him with a smirk? What do you say? Not bad for someone who is empty. Right. Victor picked up her hand and kissed her knuckles. Nia Minernigan, he replied softly, blind. You were never empty, my queen. I was just. Blinda smiled, raising her glass. They had burned the old world down to build a new one, and this time she wasn't serving the wine. She was calling the shots. And that is the incredible story of Ela and Victor. It started with a cruel insult in a language he thought she didn't understand, and it ended with her rewriting the rules of the entire game. It proves that you should never judge someone by their uniform or their station in life. Victor thought he was looking at a servant, but he was looking at a survivor, a woman who turned her trauma into a weapon and her silence into a roar that brought down an empire. What did you think of Ayla's decision at the end? Should she have taken the $10 million and left, or did she make the right choice by staying to build an empire with Victor? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and justice, please hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story.